There is something inside you that terrifies you, something you deny, something you bury under layers of morality, justifications, and false certainties. But it's there, like a shadow that whispers when the world goes dark. Nietzsche knew it. He saw it, he studied it, he shouted it to the world without reservations. And what he discovered was so repulsive, so uncomfortable, that most preferred to ridicule it rather than face it. You have to ask yourself something. What would you do if you discovered that everything you believed about life, about morality, about good and evil is nothing more than a convenient lie? What if I told you that the truth you so desperately seek is ugly, uncomfortable, unacceptable? But here comes the most terrifying question. What if Nietzsche was right? Think about it. How many times in history has someone been ridiculed or censored just because their truth was too uncomfortable? Nietzsche understood it better than anyone. People do not seek the truth. They seek certainties that do not make them feel miserable. But reality is different. And if you have the courage to keep listening, today I'm going to show you what Nietzsche really said. Not the sugar-coated versions, not the out-of-context fragments used to post on social media to seem profound. Today we are going to dive into the darkest depths of his thought. And in the end, you will have to decide, was he a madman or a prophet? Let's start with the first point, the idea that changed everything. God is dead. When Nietzsche said this, he wasn't talking about religion, he was talking about you. He was talking about what happens when the world runs out of its old certainties, when good and evil are no longer defined by an external force, and everything depends on you. Because if God is dead, then what is right? Who decides what is good and what is evil? How do you endure life without a divine purpose? Here is where Nietzsche's most repulsive thought comes into play. There is no objective morality. There are no universal rules. Everything you consider good or bad is a human construction, and the worst part? It isn't designed to benefit the strong, the bold, the creators. The morality you follow, the one you were taught since childhood, is designed to keep you weak. Now comes the blow. Have you ever felt that the world rewards mediocrity? That those who try to stand out are punished? That the bold are labeled as arrogant? That those who want to change something are seen as dangerous? It's no coincidence. Nietzsche saw it clearly. The morality that dominates the world is the morality of the slaves. And what does that mean? That society has been molded by the weak, by the resentful, by those who never could be great, and therefore made greatness seem like something bad. And here comes the part that you will find hard to accept. If you follow the rules of that morality, you're doomed to be mediocre. Take a good look at the world. People hate those who are free. They despise those who defy the norms, who don't ask for permission, who dare to say, "I don't care what you think." Do you know why? Because every time someone demonstrates that it is possible to live without chains, it exposes those who have chosen to be slaves. Do you feel it? That discomfort, that resistance to accept what I'm saying? It's normal. You've been trained to believe in the goodness of submission, in the virtue of sacrifice, in the beauty of humility. But Nietzsche saw it differently. Those ideas were created so that the strong would never realize their power. Look around you. People follow norms without questioning them. They bow down to ideals they don't even understand. They live in fear of what others might say. And why? Because the morality of the slaves has turned guilt into its best weapon. Now comes the most brutal idea. Have you noticed that most people hate those who are truly free? They say that the rich are evil, that leaders are corrupt, that those who succeed have cheated. Because it's easier to believe that than to accept that one never had the courage to take a risk. Nietzsche saw it clearly. There is no virtue in being weak. There is no glory in being submissive. And here comes the worst part. Compassion, as we know it, is a trap. I know this sounds brutal because we have been taught that compassion is the noblest thing we can have. But Nietzsche saw it differently. He said that compassion is a way to prolong weakness, that every time you help someone without forcing them to grow stronger, you are merely perpetuating their misery. Make no mistake, Nietzsche wasn't saying that the weak should be trampled upon. What he was saying is that the world moves forward thanks to the strong, to those who do not settle, to those who don't make excuses. And if we allow the morality of the slaves to govern us, the future will only bring more mediocrity. Now here comes the final question. If Nietzsche were alive today, what would he say about us? What would he think of this society obsessed with political correctness, with victimhood, with the idea that everyone deserves respect just for existing? What would he say about a world where excellence is seen as arrogance and mediocrity is celebrated? The answer is obvious. He would say that we are following exactly the path he predicted, that we have renounced greatness out of fear of judgment, that we remain trapped in a morality designed to keep us small. But here is the most important question. What are you going to do with this information? Because now you know, now you can't go back. You can no longer keep justifying your fear with comfortable ideas. Now you have two options. Follow the rules of the morality of the slaves, or do what Nietzsche suggested, break them. You will be hated for it. They will call you arrogant. They will say you're wrong, that you're selfish, that you think too much about yourself. And so what? Do you prefer to live chained so that others accept you, or do you prefer to be free? Even if that means being feared, this is the truth that Nietzsche discovered. The question is, are you ready to accept it? But wait, because here is where most people stumble. When you hear all this, your mind begins to play against you. It tells you that sounds extreme, that it can't be that simple, that there has to be another way. Because accepting what I just told you is dangerous. It's admitting that your whole life has been directed by invisible norms, by chains you didn't even know you were wearing, and worst of all, that you have been complicit in your own enslavement. Do you know what is the most terrifying thing about the truth? That once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. It's like a crack in the wall of your reality. You can ignore it for a while, pretend it isn't there, but deep down, you know that the structure is broken, that sooner or later, everything will come crashing down. And here is what Nietzsche understood before anyone else. Most people do not want the truth. They want comfort. They want to keep believing that the world is just, that there is a universal moral order, that being a good person is enough for things to work out. But tell me, is it? Think of the most admired people in the world. Were they recognized for following the norms, for being obedient, for living as they were supposed to live? No. They were recognized because they broke the rules, because they defied what was expected of them, because they didn't ask for permission. But this leads us to an even darker question. What happens to those who are not ready for this truth? Nietzsche knew it. He knew that not everyone can bear the idea that morality is nothing more than a human invention, that there is no divine purpose waiting on the horizon, that the meaning of life is not written anywhere. That's why his most brutal thought is not only that God is dead, but that most people need a God, even if it's a false one. Look around you. How many people live depending on an external authority? I'm not just talking about religion. I'm talking about everything: governments, ideologies, movements, leaders, figures of authority. There's always someone to follow, someone who tells you what is right, what is permitted, what is moral. Why? Because the void of truth is unbearable. Because accepting that you are alone, that there is no higher order protecting you, that everything depends on you, is terrifying. And most people do not want to face it. That is why they invent rules. That is why they create value systems that give them comfort. That is why they prefer meaningful enslavement over freedom without direction. And here is where Nietzsche makes his most brutal move. If there is no universal morality, if there is no truth imposed from above, then the only option is to create your own. But do you know what that implies? Absolute responsibility. Because if there are no imposed rules, if there is no divine moral code, if there is no supreme authority dictating what you must do, then everything falls on you. You can't blame anyone. You can't say you were just following orders. You can't take refuge in the excuse that you are simply doing what is right, according to society's norms. If you decide your own morality, then every action you take is yours. And this terrifies most people, because if you fail, there is no one to blame. If you make a bad decision, you can't say you were just following the rules and that the mistake wasn't yours. You are solely responsible. This is where most people run away. They prefer to continue living in the lie, in the illusion that there is an order that protects them, in the comfort of following rules imposed by others. But Nietzsche said there was another path, the path of those willing to bear that weight, of those who can endure the truth without anesthesia, of those who don't need an external morality to tell them what to do because they have created their own. That is the Ubermensch, Nietzsche's idea that has been most distorted, misinterpreted, and grotesquely used. The Ubermensch is not a tyrant, not a dictator, not a monster without scruples. It is simply one who has overcome the need for the morality of the slaves. It is the one who creates his own value system, the one who does not live according to what others expect of him, the one who does not need an authority to tell him what is good and what is bad. But there is a price to pay for this. If you follow this path, you will be alone because most people will never understand you. They will prefer to call you arrogant, selfish, insensitive. They will accuse you of not caring about others. They will say that your way of seeing the world is dangerous because it is. It threatens everything they believe in. And here is where you have to make a decision. You can continue living as you have until now, conforming to a morality you didn't create, following norms imposed by others, seeking approval from people who would never dare to live like you. Or you can do the unthinkable. You can look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I willing to create my own path, even if it means that no one understands me? Because that is the real dilemma. True freedom is not found in doing what you want. It is found in having the courage not to ask for permission. Nietzsche saw it with absolute clarity. The world is not governed by truth. It is governed by fear. Fear of freedom, fear of bearing the weight of our own decisions, fear of being responsible for who we are. And the final question is this: are you strong enough to accept this truth? Or like most, will you prefer to continue living in the comfort of a lie? The choice is yours. But remember one thing: the great minds of history never asked for permission. Are you going to be one of them, or are you simply going to follow the herd? But wait, because here is where most people stumble. What I just told you sounds powerful. It sounds liberating. But it also sounds dangerous. Because at this point, there is a question that starts to linger in your head, even if you don't want to admit it. If there are no rules imposed by a higher power, what stops someone from doing whatever they want? What about chaos? What about destruction? What about those who use this idea to justify the worst of human nature? And here is where everyone is wrong when interpreting Nietzsche. Because when he spoke of the Ubermensch, when he said that the strong must free themselves from the morality of the slaves, he was not promoting senseless anarchy. He was not saying that power justifies any action. He was saying something much deeper. True strength does not lie in dominating others. It lies in mastering oneself. Think of the most dangerous people who have ever existed, not common criminals, not visionless despots. Think of those who truly left a mark on history, for better or for worse. They all had something in common. They didn't ask for permission. But the great difference between the true Ubermensch and the mere tyrant is this: the Ubermensch does not seek to impose his will on others. He seeks to overcome himself. That is the point that no one understands. It's not about crushing others. It's not about subjugating the world. It's about transcending oneself, about not living under the rules imposed by society, but also not living under the basest impulses of human nature. Because there is a trap in this line of thought. Some believe that liberating oneself from morality means giving in to the most primitive desires, that if there are no imposed rules, then everything is permitted, that the path of strength is the path of abuse. But Nietzsche would say that that is the lowest form of existence, because true power is not about doing whatever you want. It's about doing what is right according to your own rules. And here is where the path turns dark. Because to create your own code, you must first destroy everything you believe to be true. You must uproot the inherited beliefs, the implanted fears, the artificial limits that society imposed on you. You have to destroy yourself in order to rebuild yourself. And tell me, do you have the courage to do it? Because here's the part that no one wants to accept. Being free is unbearable for most. Look around you. People live in repetition. The same jobs, the same schedules, the same empty conversations, the same pre-packaged design desires. They believe they are free because they can choose which series to watch, which food to order, which clothes to buy. But that is not freedom. That is a decorated cage. True freedom is an abyss. It is looking at the world without guides, without instructions, without anyone telling you what to do, and that is terrifying. That is why when Nietzsche wrote about the Ubermensch, he said that very few can ever become one, because most, when faced with the void of true freedom, panic. They prefer to return to the safety of imposed norms. They prefer to obey rather than decide. They prefer to be a purposeful slave rather than a free man without direction. Because being free does not simply mean choosing, it means bearing the weight of those choices. It means not being able to blame anyone. It means that if you fail, it's your fault, and most cannot bear it. That is why, when we look at history, we see that societies have always tried to crush those who think differently, those who defy the norm, those who seek something beyond the established. Because society does not reward those who challenge the system. Society rewards the obedient. It admires them in silence, yes, but it never helps them. So tell me, what do you prefer, to remain just another cog in the machine, or to become someone who doesn't need permission to exist? Here comes the part that many do not want to hear. If you decide to follow this path, I will warn you, you will be hated. Because when you decide to think for yourself, when you stop blindly following imposed norms, you become a threat to those still living inside the cage. You will be seen as someone arrogant, dangerous, even immoral, not because you are, but because your very existence is living proof that they could be free, but they don't dare to be. And people hate reminders of their own cowardice. So, here you have the final dilemma. You can stay where you are, continue following the rules you were taught, play society's game, try to please, try to fit in, try to meet what is expected of you. Or you can do the unthinkable. You can dare to think for yourself. You can destroy what binds you and build a new version of yourself, one that does not depend on the validation of others, one that does not need permission to exist. But remember one thing, true freedom is not for everyone. Only those who can bear the weight of their own decisions without excuses, without blaming anyone else, without fear of being wrong, are the ones who can truly be free. So tell me, do you have the courage to bear that burden? Or even better, do you have the courage to try? If you've come this far, it's because something I said resonated with you. Something inside you recognized that there is truth in these words. So I want you to do something. If you really feel that this message resonated with you, I want you to show it. I want you to leave a comment with this phrase: "He who does not dare to break his chains deserves to wear them." Because I want to see how many of those who made it this far are truly ready to accept the truth. And if you want to continue exploring these themes, if you want to delve even deeper into the ideas that no one dares to say out loud, then subscribe. This is not a channel for everyone. This is a channel for those who are not afraid of the truth. Are you one of them? See you in the next video.